In today's lesson, we will be learning to multiply fractions. We have previously discussed that multiplication is simply repeated addition. This applies to the multiplication of a whole number as repeated addition of a unit fraction. So when you multiply a whole number times a unit fraction, you're really doing repeated addition as well. For example, let's take a look at 2 times 1/4. That is really the same as 1/4 plus 1/4. If we add the 1/4 plus 1/4, we'll get 2/4. All of these are indeed equal. Therefore, 2 times 1/4 is equal to 2/4. We could then take this one step further and reduce 2/4. We could divide both the 2 and the 4 by their greatest common factor of 2. And we divide 2 by 2, we would get 1, and 4 divided by 2 would be 2. So 2/4 would be equal to 1/2 in lowest terms. Let's take a look at 1/3 of 5. If we go ahead and we divide 5 whole things into 3 parts, which is where we want to find 1/3, we could show that through a picture. And I have 5 things, and I've divided each of the 5 things into 3 parts. And I want to have a total of 1/3 of the 5. So if I have all these 5 things and I'm dividing it up amongst 3 people, how much are they each going to get? Well, we have a total of, now a total of 15 pieces. And if we divide that up amongst these 3 people, they're each going to get 5 pieces. Or think of it as you have 3 people, so we each have enough for, I'm going to get a whole thing. My friend Blue's going to get a whole thing. Our friend Yellow's going to get a whole thing, because we're dividing up amongst the 3 of us. But there's not enough for us each to get another whole thing. So there's 6 pieces left. So we see we broke those 2 wholes into 6 pieces, and Yellow's going to get one of these pieces and one of these pieces. Blue's going to get a piece here and a piece here. And Green's going to get a piece and a piece. So they each have a total of, when we look at it, Green has these 3 pieces in this whole thing, and then these other 2 pieces. So they each get 5/3, or they get same thing as 1 whole thing and 2/3 of a whole. So all we did was we changed this improper fraction right here into a mixed number. So we just used pictures to show that. But let's remember 1/3 of 5, what we're really doing here. When we're multiplying fractions, times means of. So when I say 1/3 of 5, that really means the same thing as 1/3 times 5. And remember from our previous examples, that's really the same as 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. And when we go ahead and we add up all those ones, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have 5/3. So we're doing the same thing. Earlier we just showed with some pictures, and now we're just showing here with our repeated addition. So when we found 1/3 of 5, that was really 1 part or 1 share out of 3 shares. What if I were to look at 2/3 of 5? So in our previous problem, when we looked at 1/3 of 5, 1/3 of 5 was just 1 part when I had divided the 5 rectangles into 3 equal parts. So 2/3 of 5 is really 2 parts when I take those 5 rectangles and divide each of them into 3 equal parts. So if we had divided everything into 3 equal parts, but I'm going to get 2/3 of the 5 rectangles and someone else was going to get just 1/3, let's take a look at what it would look like. I would get 1, 2, and the other person would get 1 whole. And then we have those 2 left there. So remember, I want 2/3, so I want double. So we're not going to just take that last little rectangle and split it between the two of us. I'm going to get more than they will. So if we each took one of those last rectangles, we would each be getting half of what's left. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to get the 2 shares, and then I'm going to get another 2 parts. My yellow friend is only going to get 2. So I still have, out of those 6 pieces, I get 2 of the 3 parts, and they only get 1 of the parts. So using the visual, what would 2/3 of 5 be, or 2/3 times 5? Well, I can see that I have 2 wholes, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 thirds. Well, we also know, as I shaded that in right here, that's really 1 whole. So I would really have 3 whole things and 1/3. So we just did that with a picture. Let's break it down with using the repeated addition of 2/3. So we see I have 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3. So if we look there, I have 5 2/3 because I'm telling them that it's 2/3 times 5. So if I go ahead and I add those up, I know I'm going to copy over my denominator, and I have 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. That's going to be 10. Well, I don't want to leave that as 10/3. That's that improper fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change that improper fraction into a mixed number. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. My leftover becomes my numerator, and my denominator stays the same. So I have 3 and 1/3, which is exactly what we had gotten earlier. So we just showed it with repeated addition and our pictures. So in this case, we showed 2 parts. 2/3 of 5 was really 2 parts, whereas 1/3 of 5 was 1 part when we went through and we divided everything up into 3 pieces. You might be sitting there saying, well, that's all well and great. I understand multiplication is just repeated addition, but how do I really go through if I'm going to multiply fractions? What's really the process, just like when we add and subtract fractions? Well, you can see here we have our 2 fractions. We have a over b, and we have c over d. And when we multiply them, we just multiply our numerators together. So that's why we have a and c over here. And we multiply our denominators together. And we have b and d over here. Let's take a look at a little example. If I have 2/3 times 3/4, I'm going to multiply my numerators. 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 4 is 12. Well, I did solve the problem correctly, but I need to go one step further. I need to look at 2 things. Is my answer an improper fraction? No, it's not. So I'm going to continue to the second question. And the second question is, can that fraction be reduced? And it can. And the greatest number that can divide into 6 and 12 is 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 12 divided by 6 is 2. So 2/3 times 3/4 is 1/2 in lowest terms. 6/12 wasn't incorrect, but it's not the best answer. 1/2 is really the best answer. Let's back up and visit one of those first problems that we had looked at when we first started this lesson. Earlier we multiplied 2 times 1/4, which we showed through repeated addition as 1/4 plus 1/4, which was equal to 2/4, or when we reduced it, 1/2. Well, just looking at what we just did earlier, with here when we multiply our numerators and denominators, what do we do here? Well, let's look at that 2 times 1/4. Think about it. When you have two whole things, you have two whole things. You're not dividing it up. It's just they're two whole things. So if we take our whole number and we put it over 1, if you were to go and change that and 2 over 1, that is an improper fraction. So if we go through and we change that and we divide 2 divided by 1, we're simply going to get 2. So 2 is the same as 2 over 1. And now we can go ahead and we can multiply those out. 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 4 is 4. And if we reduce that further, we're going to get 1/2. Same thing as we did when we did a repeated addition. So let's take a look at some notes. When we're going to multiply a fraction by a fraction, the first step is to go through and multiply the numerators. So they did 2 times 3, and they got 6. Then you're going to multiply, step 2 is to multiply your denominators. 5 times 4, and they got 20. And the third step is to simplify. Here, if you need to, they showed with a little picture, and they had the 2/5 and they had the 3/4, and they went through, and you could see that they did this to go through and solve. So they solved it, but you could go through and reduce simply by finding the greatest common factor. And in this case, the greatest common factor was 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. So when you're multiplying fractions, multiply your numerators, then multiply your denominators, and then simplify if possible. When you're going to multiply a fraction by a whole number, you rewrite the whole number as a fraction. So here in this example, we have 1/4 times 5. So we're going to first step rewrite that whole number as a fraction. So they left the 1/4 and they put the 5 over 1. Now it's a fraction. It's still equal to 5. They multiply their fractions. So remember, we go back, we're going to multiply our numerators. 1 times 5 is 5. 4 times 1 is 4. So they have 5/4. Well, that's improper fraction. We don't want to leave it that way. And we see right here, if needed, convert the improper to a mixed number. So we saw 5/4, and they show us right here where they simplified in step 3 right here. And we can see that they made it into 1 and 1/4. You really could have just set it up over to the side and divided 5 by 4, and you would have gotten 1 and 1/4. So remember, you rewrite the whole number as a fraction, multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators, and then simplify if possible. Any questions? Make sure you take a look at the notes that you were supposed to take during the video. Refer back to that. Go back and watch any parts of the video that you need to. And also, ask your teacher if you should have any further questions. And remember, keep calm and multiply those fractions.